You know, the golden rule of modern consumer tech, right? I mean, for the last decade or so, it really feels like every single year the devices we rely on are mandated to just get thinner and lighter.
Oh yeah, thinner, lighter, and visible, basically.
Like almost invisible.
Yeah.
We demand these laptops with the profile of a credit card, and we want wireless earbuds that weigh absolutely nothing. And of course, we want our desk setups to look as minimalist as humanly possible.
It's an industry-wide obsession with weightlessness, really.
Hmm.
Erasing the physical footprint of our tools has sort of become synonymous with technological advancement.
Mm.
I mean, if a company can shave off, what, like 50 grams from last year's model?
It's a revolution.
Exactly. It's marketed as this revolutionary breakthrough.
Which is why I think it's completely jarring and honestly quite refreshing when you encounter a piece of hardware that just completely ignores that memo.
Yeah, throws it right out the window.
We're looking at a device today that when it arrives in its box and hits your desk, it has the density of an absolute boulder.
A literal brick.
Yeah, and strangely enough, it leans into that mass as its primary selling point. We are doing a comprehensive deep dive today into the Royal KLUDGE N99 Phantom Mechanical Keyboard. And we're looking at this not just as, a peripheral, but really as a case study in how luxury hobbyist level engineering is aggressively bleeding into the mainstream workspace.
Right, because that intersection of enthusiast culture and mass market availability,
Yeah.
that is exactly where the industry is seeing the most friction and honestly the most innovation right now. The features packed into this specific board, things like multi-layer acoustic dampening, dedicated microdisplays, and these complex connectivity protocols, they were until very recently barricaded behind hundreds of dollars.
And hours of building it yourself.
Exactly, hours of manual assembly.
So let's start with that initial physical presence, because that mass you just mentioned, it sets a very deliberate tone from the moment you take it out of the box. I mean, this thing is heavy.
It is shockingly heavy.
It tips the scales at over a kilogram. And it doesn't have that hollow, creaky plastic feel you expect from mid-tier office tech. It's incredibly dense. And it comes with this generous array of high-quality accessories, too.
Yeah, they really didn't skimp there.
No, like a braided USB-C cable that actually feels durable, proper keycap and switch pullers, and a 2.4 gigahertz dongle that's cleverly tucked into a magnetic slot on the chassis so you don't instantly lose it.
Which is a lifesaver.
I know, right? But that weight is what really caught my attention. It's like closing the door of a luxury car. You hear that deep, solid thud, and your brain just immediately registers a sense of build quality.
Well, the psychology of mass and consumer electronics is a really powerful design tool. Our brains subconsciously translate physical density into reliability.
Right.
When a device is heavy, the immediate neurological assumption is that the internal cavity is packed with complex, durable components rather than just, empty air.
Empty space.
Manufacturers deliberately leverage that kinetic feedback. But with a mechanical keyboard, weight serves a much more vital functional purpose that goes beyond just perceived luxury. It really comes down to the physics of kinetic energy transfer.
Well, wait, isn't the trend in tech to make everything lighter and thinner? Like, why is a heavy keyboard actually a good thing?
Because when you're typing, you're constantly striking the board. You are essentially hammering it for 8 hours a day.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right? Whether you are an aggressive touch typist drafting a 50-page report, or you're deep into a highly competitive gaming session, you are continually transferring downward force into the chassis.
Right.
If a keyboard is constructed to be thin and lightweight, following that minimalist tech trend, that kinetic energy has nowhere to go. Yeah. It causes the entire board to microshift across your desk pad.
Oh, I hate when they slide around.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
And worse than that, the center of the PCB, the actual circuit board, it will flex and bow under your fingers.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. That mushy trampoline feeling right in the middle of the space bar on cheaper boards, it completely ruins the typing flow.
Mass is the antidote to that flex.
Ah.
The sheer 1 kilogram weight of the N99 anchors it. The chassis absorbs the shock waves of your keystrokes, maintaining a perfectly rigid stationary platform. So you are transferring energy into a solid object rather than a hollow plastic drum, which fundamentally changes the tactile feedback of every single keystroke.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that structural integrity is a great segue into how the board is actually laid out. The physical footprint here is doing something very interesting. It utilizes a 96% layout housing 98 keys.
Yeah, which is a very specific choice.
It is.
Yeah.
And for anyone who follows the mechanical keyboard space, seeing the 96% form factor break out of the niche custom community and into mainstream pre-built models is fascinating. I mean, it retains the numpad, which is an absolute non-negotiable requirement for accountants, developers, anyone living inside spreadsheets.
They need those numbers.
Right, but it drastically compresses the overall width compared to a traditional 100% full-size battleship. So where did the missing 4% of the keyboard go?
Well, the evolution of workspace ergonomics has heavily favored this compression. For decades, the standard 104 key layout was the default, but it is remarkably inefficient from a spatial perspective. I mean, think about the physical geography of a traditional keyboard.
Okay.
You have the main alphanumeric cluster, then a massive gap of empty plastic, then a navigation cluster with your arrow keys and page up, page down.
Right, the little island in the middle,
Exactly. Another gap of empty plastic, and then finally the numpad.
which pushes your mouse hand so far out to the right.
And that outward positioning forces your right shoulder into a constant state of external rotation and abduction.
Ouch.
Yeah, over an 8-hour workday, that microstrain compounds into significant shoulder and neck fatigue. So the 96% layout is often referred to as the ergonomic Goldilocks zone because it mathematically eliminates that dead space.
Mhm.
It squishes the navigation cluster and the numpad directly against the main typing area, forming one continuous block of keys.
I see. So there's just no empty plastic.
Right. You retain total functional utility, but you reclaim inches of desk space, allowing your mouse arm to rest in a much more natural neutral alignment closer to your body.
It's optimizing the physical desktop, which I think pairs perfectly with how the internal brain of this board optimizes the digital workflow. We really have to talk about the connectivity here because this is where a peripheral elevates from a simple input device into a command center.
Definitely.
It features tri-mode connectivity, so you get wired USB-C, a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection via the dongle, and Bluetooth 5.0 and 5.1.
Which is pretty standard on premium boards now.
True, but the standout capability is that you can actively connect it to 3 different devices simultaneously and instantly toggle between them with a single keystroke. I feel like this speaks directly to the reality of the modern desk, which is usually just a chaotic, tangled mess of, a work-issued laptop, a personal PC, maybe a tablet on the side.
The workflow fragmentation you're describing is a massive pain point for modern professionals. Historically, attempting to use a single set of peripherals across multiple ecosystems was an exercise in pure frustration.
Standard Bluetooth protocols required you to manually hold down a pairing button, wait for a flashing indicator,
Dive into the host computer's settings, initiate a scan.
and wait for the handshake.
Right, and heaven forbid you wanted to quickly type out a long text message on your iPad because that meant forgetting the device on your laptop, initiating the iPad pairing, and then doing the whole dance in reverse to get back to work.
It was enough cognitive friction to make you just give up and literally put 2 separate keyboards on your desk.
I've seen people do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the integration of modern tri-mode controllers fundamentally alters that dynamic. The architecture relies on dedicated, independent memory channels within the keyboard's own microcontroller.
Okay.
So when you pair your work Windows machine to channel 1, your iPad to channel 2, and perhaps a personal MacBook to channel 3, the keyboard establishes and retains those cryptographic handshakes in suspension.
Oh, so it doesn't drop them.
Exactly. When you press the toggle button, the board isn't dropping the connection and desperately searching for a new one. It is simply shifting which memory channel is authorized to transmit data at that exact millisecond.
So the host device, like your laptop or tablet, thinks the keyboard just went to sleep for a fraction of a second, and when you toggle back, it instantly wakes up.
That's the mechanism. It bridges disparate operating systems seamlessly. You can be compiling code on a secure enterprise machine, tap a button, reply to a secure message on your personal tablet, and tap back without breaking your operational flow.
That is so incredibly useful.
And furthermore, the inclusion of the 2.4 gigahertz dongle caters to the other half of this demographic, which is gamers.
Right, because Bluetooth latency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bluetooth, even at version 5.1, inherently suffers from polling rate limitations and latency. It's fine for typing an email, but unacceptable for competitive gaming. The 2.4 gigahertz band utilizes a localized high-speed radio frequency that rivals a direct wired connection polling at 1,000 hertz. The board is acting as a chameleon, basically adapting its transmission protocol to whatever the current task demands.
Now, balancing those transmission protocols is impressive, but we really need to look at what happens when your fingers actually hit the keys. I mean, I have seen multi-layer gasket mounts on premium custom boards that easily push past the $300 or $400 mark.
Oh yeah, easily.
But seeing this specific acoustic architecture trickling down into this accessible price bracket is wild. The N99 utilizes a gasket-mounted plate alongside 5 distinct layers of internal sound dampening material.
5 layers.
Yeah. The resulting typing feel is described as incredibly soft, producing this deep, warm Fox sound that is practically therapeutic compared to a typical office keyboard. I mean, I always thought the whole point of a mechanical keyboard was that loud, obnoxiously click-clack sound that drives everyone in the office crazy. How does adding a gasket change that?
What's fascinating here is to understand the engineering feat we have to contrast it with how mechanical keyboards have been built for the last 20 years.
Okay.
The traditional manufacturing method is known as a tray mount. You take the PCB and the metal switch plate, and you screw them directly into physical standoffs, molded into the bottom of a hard plastic or aluminum case,
So the vibrating components are bolted directly to the hollow outer shell.
which turns the entire case into an acoustic amplifier.
Ah, I see.
When a switch bottoms out, the hard plastic stem strikes the housing, sending high-frequency vibrations through the metal plate, down the mounting screws, and straight into the chassis. This creates a harsh, high-pitched resonance, the clack and ping that most people associate with obnoxious mechanical keyboard.
Right, that echoey metallic sound.
Exactly. A gasket mount fundamentally severs that physical bridge
It isolates the vibration.
entirely. Instead of using screws, the internal assembly, the plate, and the PCB is sandwiched between the top and bottom halves of the outer case using saw strips of compressed material, usually silicone or pour-on foam.
Oh, so those are the gaskets.
Yes, these are the gaskets. The entire typing apparatus is virtually floating in suspension. When you press a key, the downward force is absorbed and dispersed by the gaskets before it can ever reach the hard outer shell.
So there's zero plastic-on-plastic or metal-on-plastic collision at the mounting points.
None. But Royal Kludge takes it further by introducing those 5 layers of internal dampening. They are essentially packing the empty cavities of the chassis with dense foam, IXPE switch pads, and silicone dampeners.
It's like soundproofing a room.
Exactly. These layers act as acoustic low-pass filters. High-pitched, harsh frequencies lack the energy to penetrate dense foam, so they are absorbed and neutralized. Only the low-frequency deep resonances have the wavelength to escape the board.
Which results in that highly coveted deep thock sound profile.
Yes, the thock.
And this goes so far beyond just sounding cool for a aesthetic desk setup video online. The acoustics of our workspace have a massive, scientifically documented impact on cognitive focus.
Oh, absolutely.
Working in an environment filled with harsh, high-pitched, unpredictable noises like a cheap keyboard clacking away in a cubicle, it actively spikes cortisol levels.
It's incredibly stressful.
It forces the brain to constantly dedicate background processing power to filtering out auditory threats, which just shatters deep concentration.
The transition from a jarring high-frequency clack to a muffled low-frequency thock transforms the sensory experience of typing. A rhythmic, low-pitched auditory feedback loop can actually be sensory soothing. It aids in entering a psychological slow state. You are turning a peripheral that used to be a noise-polluting distraction into a tool that actively contributes to a calmer, more focused ambient environment.
I find that shift in peripheral design so compelling, treating the keyboard as a holistic workspace enhancement rather than just a crude text entry tool. And that philosophy of packing in features completely blurs the lines of what this device actually is, especially when we look at the top right corner of the board. Here's where it gets really interesting. Yes, the RK-N99 includes a built-in TFT microdisplay and a dedicated rotary volume knob. You've got a screen that displays active connection status, battery percentage OS mode, and it allows you to adjust the RGB lighting and volume on the fly. You can even upload custom GIFs to it.
Which people love to do.
It really feels like someone took the functionality of a smartwatch and just embedded it directly into your desk tools.
Integrating microdisplays into peripherals might initially present as a superficial gimmick. I mean, especially when people are just uploading dancing cat GIFs to their keyboards.
Hey, the dancing cats are important.
They are very important.
Yeah.
But if we analyze the utility, it solves a very specific software problem: cognitive friction and bloated background applications.
You're talking about having to install massive proprietary control software just to change a backlight color?
Yes. The industry standard for years has required users to run incredibly heavy background applications, often consuming hundreds of megabytes of RAM just to interface with their keyboard.
It's ridiculous.
If you're in the middle of a full-screen application or a game, and you need to check your peripheral's battery or change the wireless routing, you have to minimize your primary task. Open a clunky software suite, navigate through submenus, apply the change, and then attempt to re-immerse yourself in your work.
It completely derails your momentum.
By offloading those settings to a localized TFT screen and a physical rotary knob, the keyboard operates autonomously. The MCU handles the adjustments internally. Your eyes never have to leave your primary monitor, and your hands never have to leave the home row.
Wow.
You're interacting with the hardware on a localized tactile level, which removes the software barrier entirely.
But driving a full-color TFT screen alongside individual RGB LEDs for nearly 100 keys while simultaneously maintaining a 1000 hertz polling rate over a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection, I mean, that requires a staggering amount of
A
power.
massive amount.
Which explains the sheer size of the battery they had to include. Depending on the exact specification, it's rocking a 7200 to 7500 milliamp hour battery.
That is huge.
That is tablet-tier battery capacity squeezed into a keyboard.
It is an immense lithium cell. For a peripheral often rated to last a full week of heavy use on a single charge, even with the screen active.
A whole week.
Yeah. The physical volume required to house a 7500 milliamp hour battery is another contributing factor to that 1 kilogram total weight we discussed earlier. You cannot defy the physics of energy storage. High drain features necessitate dense, heavy power supplies.
And speaking of hardware longevity, I have to highlight the hot swappable PCB. This board supports both 3-pin and 5-pin mechanical switches, allowing you to pull them out and replace them without touching a soldering iron. This feels perfectly timed with the broader right-to-repair movement that is finally gaining traction in consumer tech.
The shift toward hot swappable architecture is arguably the most pro-consumer trend in the peripheral market.
Right.
Oh, definitely. Historically, buying a mechanical keyboard was a permanent commitment. The switches were soldered directly through the PCB. If you purchased a board with linear switches and decided a year later you preferred the tactile bump of a different switch, your only options were to buy an entirely new keyboard or buy a specialized soldering station, risk burning the delicate copper traces on the circuit board, and spend 5 hours manually desoldering over 100 individual pins.
It essentially treated a minor hardware preference, or just a single broken E key, as a death sentence for the entire device. It's an ecological nightmare and a massive waste of money.
Hot swappable sockets changed the paradigm entirely. The PCB is outfitted with reinforced conductive receptors. You treat the mechanical switches like modular building blocks.
Like Legos.
Exactly like Legos. If a switch begins to chatter or fail, you use the included puller, extract the switch, and click a new one into place in 3 seconds. Furthermore, supporting both 3-pin and 5-pin architectures means the board is compatible with virtually every aftermarket switch manufactured globally.
So you're never locked into just one brand.
Never. The lifespan of the keyboard becomes theoretically infinite. The chassis and the PCB remain constant, while the acoustic and tactile properties can be infinitely rebuilt and customized as your preferences evolve.
Okay, we have painted a very glowing picture of this device. I mean, the massive battery, the autonomous screen, the therapeutic acoustics, the right to repair modularity.
That sounds perfect.
Right. But to be perfectly objective, we need to do a reality check. The source material outlines several grounded realities and friction points that potential buyers absolutely have to consider. So what does this all mean for the average buyer? Are these actual deal breakers? Let's dig into the trade-offs, starting with the portability paradox.
Ah, yes.
The reviewer notes that this keyboard is terrible for travel. And it's ironic because the exact features that make it feel so premium, you know, the dense sound dampening foam, the massive lithium battery, the thick chassis to eliminate flex, they're exactly what destroy its mobility.
It represents the ultimate compromise in hardware engineering. You cannot engineer a device to be an immovable, acoustically dampened high-mass desk anchor and simultaneously expect it to slide effortlessly into a slim laptop messenger bag.
It just doesn't work.
No, the N99 makes a definitive, uncompromising choice. It sacrifices all pretense of mobility to completely master the stationary desktop experience. If your daily routine involves throwing your gear into a backpack to work from 3 different coffee shops and a university library carrying a 1 kilogram brick of plastic and lithium, is going to become instantly regrettable.
Yeah, your back is going to hate you.
Huh.
It is strictly a desk-bound command center. Now, the second major friction point is the layout itself. We praised the 96% form factor earlier for saving desk space, but the reviewer specifically highlighted a steep learning curve.
There always is.
Because everything is squished together, there is no physical gap between the arrow keys, the numpad, and the main typing cluster. They admitted to constantly misstriking the arrow keys when trying to hit the 0 on the numpad. This brings up a really interesting conversation about muscle memory. I mean, if you're a touch typist, trying to adapt to a condensed layout can feel incredibly jarring.
The frustration experienced during that transition is rooted in neurological mapping.
Okay.
Our brains are astonishingly efficient at spatial calculation. If you have been typing on a standard 100% full-size keyboard for a decade, your motor cortex has mapped the precise millimeter distance required for your right pinky to stretch and strike the numpad 0. It is an automated script.
And suddenly the hardware changes, but the script doesn't.
Exactly. When you transition to a 96% layout, the physical geography is altered. The 0 key is typically shortened to accommodate the left arrow key.
Right, because they need to fit it in.
Right. When your brain runs its automated script, your finger lands on the edge of an arrow key instead of the numpad. The cognitive friction is immense because your brain recognizes an error, but your muscle memory resists the correction. It requires a period of neuroplasticity to remap those spatial coordinates.
I always compare it to driving a friend's car where the windshield wiper stalk and the turn signal are on opposite sides of the steering wheel.
Oh, that is the worst.
You know, intellectually where they are, but the second you try to change lanes in traffic, you end up aggressively spraying wiper fluid all over the windshield. Your brain just defaults to the old map.
That analogy perfectly captures the involuntary nature of motor memory. The reviewer notes that it takes a few days of active use to adjust. During that window, a user will experience a dip in their words per minute and a spike in typographical errors.
So you just have to push through it.
You have to be willing to endure that short-term frustration to unlock the long-term ergonomic benefits of the compressed layout.
Okay. The third trade-off involves the visual design, specifically the keycaps. The board comes with PBT double-shot keycaps, which are universally praised for durability. But the reviewer notes they lack shine-through, meaning despite having a massive battery to power incredibly bright RGB lighting beneath the switches, the light doesn't illuminate the actual letters and numbers on the top of the keys. The light just bleeds around the edges in a halo effect. Now, for a touch typist, this is completely irrelevant because they never look down.
Right.
But for a low-light worker or someone hunting for a specific symbol at night, this feels like a glaring usability oversight. Why use high-end materials if it breaks the lighting functionality?
It is a fascinating manufacturing dilemma within the keyboard enthusiast space.
Oh.
Keycaps are generally made from two types of plastic, ABS or PBT.
Okay.
ABS is cheaper, easier to mold, and very easy to make transparent for RGB shine-through. However, ABS plastic degrades rapidly. The oils from your fingertips polish the plastic over time, resulting in that greasy, shiny, worn-out look on your most used keys within a few months.
Which ruins the aesthetic of a premium board.
Precisely. PBP plastic, on the other hand, is significantly denser, heavily textured, and highly resistant to those finger oils. It retains its premium matte finish for years.
So PBT is obviously better.
In terms of feel, yes. However, manufacturing high-quality, thick PBT keycaps, where a secondary translucent plastic is injected perfectly to form crisp, illuminated legends, is technically difficult and highly expensive.
Oh, I see.
Furthermore, adding the translucent plastic often compromises the density of the keycap, which degrades that deep acoustic thock sound we spend so much time analyzing.
Oh, it messes with the sound.
Yes. Manufacturers at this price point have to choose: do we prioritize durable texture and superior acoustics, or do we prioritize nighttime visibility? Royal KLUDGE, targeting that enthusiast market, opted for acoustics and durability over shine-through functionality.
It's a calculated sacrifice. It assumes the primary user cares more about the sound and the feel than looking at the legends in the dark. Which really brings us to the final verdict on how this board fits into the wider tech landscape. Taking all of this into account, the gasket mount acoustics, the TFT screen, the massive battery, the hot swap modularity alongside the weight and the layout learning curve, the reviewer points out that the RK N99 Phantom is priced around 1.8 million Vietnamese dong, which is roughly equivalent to 70 to 75 US dollars.
Unbelievable.
Right. They note it essentially combines the convenience of their S98 model with the premium acoustic features of their N80 model. They recommend it highly for office workers, gamers, and tech modders looking to upgrade from a cheap budget board while explicitly steering frequent travelers away from it. Looking at the sheer volume of features, it feels like a rare piece of hardware, a jack of all trades that actually manages to master most of them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the price-to-performance ratio here is the ultimate disruptor.
Yeah.
If we step back and view this through the lens of industry progression, a $75 price tag for this specific combination of features is a watershed moment. 3 years ago, if a consumer wanted 5 layers of acoustic dampening, a polycarbonate gasket-mounted plate tri-mode wireless switching, and a hot swappable PCB, they had to navigate obscure group buys, wait 6 months for shipping, and spend over $200 on bare-bones component switches and keycaps separately.
You had to be a dedicated hobbyist just to access the baseline tech.
The RK N99 represents the aggressive democratization of those luxury features. By packaging enthusiast-grade engineering into a pre-built, mass-produced chassis at a mid-tier price point, they aren't just releasing a good product, they are forcing a market correction.
because everyone else has to catch up.
Exactly. The baseline expectations for what a $70 keyboard must deliver have been permanently elevated. Competitors can no longer get away with selling hollow plastic tray-mounted boards at this price tier. The ceiling for budget performance has become the new floor.
That is incredible context. So to recap the journey we've taken today, we started with a surprisingly dense unboxing experience that forced us to question our obsession with weightless tech. We broke down the physics of kinetic typing energy and explored the acoustic wonders of gasket mounts, discovering how a deep, low-frequency thaw can actively improve office focus and lower cortisol.
Right.
We analyzed the boundary-pushing inclusion of dedicated TFT screens and tablet-sized batteries, showing how keyboards are localizing software to reduce cognitive friction. And we grounded all of this in the realities of spatial muscle memory, the trade-offs of heavy hardware, and the manufacturing choices behind PBT keycaps.
It demonstrates that the peripherals we physically interact with the most are undergoing the most rapid and complex evolution, adapting to the fragmented multi-device nature of modern work.
It absolutely does. And it leaves me with one final slightly radical thought to ponder. We just spent this entire deep dive analyzing a keyboard that is equipped with its own internal memory channels to manage cryptographic Bluetooth handshakes, its own localized operating logic, to drive a dedicated TFT screen and a massive lithium battery large enough to power a small tablet.
Yeah, it's basically a computer.
Right. It is handling complex processing tasks entirely independently of the host machine. If our peripherals are getting this smart and housing this much localized computing power, how long will it be until the keyboard of the future simply absorbs the processor and the hard drive entirely becoming the entire computer and rendering the traditional laptop or PC tower completely obsolete?
That is a wild thought.
We might just be looking at the early prototype of our next desktop replacement. Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.